Welcome to Emotional First Aid, Tools to Manage Stress and Trauma. I'll introduce myself in a moment, but first I'd like to give you some context regarding this presentation. This presentation was developed by the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology's Humanitarian Committee. It is meant to help those who want to bring emotional first aid to their community to present its concepts and practices as a way to educate others. Please note that this is meant for educational purposes only. It is not meant to diagnose or treat or constitute a relationship, a treatment relationship between ASAP and those of you watching, nor me as the presenter. Again, this is for educational purposes. I do encourage you to speak with a mental health practitioner to confirm that utilizing these practices would be useful and helpful to you. Neither ASAP nor myself are aware of any evidence that suggests that these practices could cause harm. But we also encourage you, as you watch and participate, that you do so of your own volition. And again, that you speak with your own mental health provider or seek one out to determine if this is right for you. Also, as I share with you what the different techniques that we present do, know that this is not a guarantee of any results for you, but the intention behind the activities. If you want to learn more about ASAP, what I suggest that you do is that you contact them. You can go to their website where you can learn about other resources they have for resilience. And also if you want to bring this to your community. I'll also go back to the first pages. So if you would like to read them more closely, I invite you to pause and go ahead and take time to read the disclaimer here and also here. So now I'd love to tell you who I am. I'm Dr. Cicely Horsham-Brathwaite. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of New York. And both in my clinical practice and in my coaching practice, I work from an integrated perspective where I bring in tools like energy psychology, which is some of what I'll be presenting to you today. When we talk, my intention is to share with you the impact of stress and trauma, provide you with some tools to manage that stress and trauma, and then support your self-empowerment about ways to create opportunities for emotional first aid within your own life. Before I go into stress and trauma, I want to introduce you to a couple of practices that are helpful. And so the first one is called the balance hookup. And so for this practice, what I'd like to invite you to do, like the human in the picture, is to, in your chair, as you're able, cross your hands in front of your chest, and then put one ankle over the other. Doesn't matter which one. And from this position, I invite you to breathe in through your nose with your tongue at the tip of your mouth, or I should say the tip of your tongue behind your top front teeth, okay? And then when you breathe out, you're going to release your tongue and breathe out of your mouth. You'll do this for a couple of seconds. Until you feel calmer. And now you can switch your hands. So the one that was on the bottom now moves to the top, and the same thing with your ankles. The one that was on the bottom moves on top of the other ankle. And again, so you'll breathe in through your nose with the tip of your tongue behind your top front teeth. And then release your tongue. You can just let it drop. and breathe out of your mouth. You'll continue to do this. Okay. So now let's try another technique. This is called heart breathing. So the last one that we did, the balance hookup, is meant to balance the right and left hemispheres of your brain. It's helpful to release anxiety and stress and to help you center yourself. You can use this after something challenging that happens or after a long day. Now we'll move to heart breathing, okay? So heart breathing simply is what it says. You're going to cross your hands in front of your heart, and you're going to focus your attention to the area around your heart. You might even focus on feeling your heart beating. Just notice that. And if you can't feel your heart, just imagine the pulse and rhythm of your heartbeat. And from this position, you're going to breathe slowly and deeply, breathing in and out through your heart. So you're imagining your breath flowing in and out of your heart. This heart breathing practice comes from an organization called HeartMath. You can easily search them on the internet to learn more about the work that they do. But the purpose of heart breathing is to help you to get more connected with yourself and to increase the feelings of peace within your body in the moment. So let's talk about what emotional first aid is. Emotional first aid is used to help a person who is unable to calm or soothe themselves after a challenging or traumatic or stressful situation. These techniques can be used to help a person to return to increased sense of calm, and it can be done alone or with a group of people. It can help after a challenging situation prevent symptoms of post-traumatic stress and long-term effects of trauma. So this is why we teach it, so that folks have resources to utilize and resource themselves when experiencing challenging situations. Why, you might ask, do we do this? Why do we offer emotional first aid? Well, we find that it helps people to calm after challenging situations. It can help them move along the healing process. It can help them also feel more grounded and be able to move from their emotional brain to their thinking brain so that they can engage in problem solving. Also, being able to utilize these tools can, again, help people to calm themselves so that they can engage in ways that reduce conflict. So I've talked to you about what emotional first aid is. Let's talk about what it's not. As I mentioned earlier, it's not a substitute for mental health treatment, right? It's meant to be a support, an adjunct to treatment. It's meant to, again, help us to have resources that we can use ourselves and share in community when going through challenging times. And so I hope in that spirit you will use this. If you are watching this with others, I invite you to pause and discuss these questions with those that you are watching this with. But even for yourself, if you're alone, I'd like you to sort of spend some moment, to the extent that you feel comfortable, to focus on right now, what's your experience of stressful situations, right? What are some of the things that you deal with either in your role or in your life right now? And even in the past. Second, you might reflect upon what were the challenges for you in these situations? What was hard to cope with or deal with? And also, thirdly, I invite you to think about how you calm yourself when you are dealing with stress. Okay, so take some time to consider those things. There's no judgment to any of these, and only answer them to the extent that you feel comfortable. So I invite you now to pause and then come back to me once you've had a chance to reflect. All right. So these tools can help you in many ways, and they can help you as you bring them to others to support folks to center themselves. By having these tools, it helps us to be stress and trauma informed, and it helps us to have tools that we can use to calm ourselves. Sometimes we don't know what to do. We just know we are experiencing challenges. So one of the ways that we can be stress and trauma informed is to have an understanding of our body's natural response to stress. When we go through stressful circumstances, uh, often on the other side, we might wonder why we reacted in the ways that we reacted. And that comes from really like thinking, right? And judgment, and narratives we have about what we did and did not do in stressful circumstances or stressful times. At the same time, what often is more accurate is that our body has a physiological response, a natural response to stress. You've likely heard these before, that there are 4 stress responses that we have that are wired into our body that help us currently and helped our genetic ancestors survive. That's fight, flight, freeze, and flop. Okay. When we're in a calm state, that's called the parasympathetic state. Our body is allowing ourselves to relax and be at our homeostasis. But when we are in a stressed state, our body is sympathetic to that. And in fact, that's called our sympathetic state. Most of the time, we are at our baseline, we're feeling balanced, and we're part parasympathetic and part sympathetic. But when we experience a threat, our system goes into these states, fight, flight, freeze, or flop, as a way to help us cope. And our body's physiological response is what is driving the train, the bus, the automobile, right? And our brain, our logic is not working. And so what we often want to do in these situations is to get out of them, right? To be in flight. But when that is not possible, right? We cannot get out of the situation. We are more likely to go to one of the other states, fight, freeze, or flop. And so when this happens, when we have a response that our autonomic nervous system creates for us, that can happen to everyone, whether we are the person who is directly experiencing the traumatic incident or incidents, or we are victimized, or we are the bystander. When we have heard these difficult things, we can have these stress responses. And so there are many ways for us to get back into a regulated state, and we'll practice some of those ways shortly. So let's talk about each response very quickly. Fight is basically what we imagined it. When we feel a threat, we respond assertively to that threat. We respond in a way to keep ourselves safe and to match the energy of the threat that we experience. So we all have a range of fight behaviors. Those fight behaviors may be saying no, they may be actively engaging physically. It may be whatever we have experienced in our past will lead to what our fight response looks like. Then there is the flight response. And the flight response is any behavior or activity that the individual under the stressful circumstances experiences when they come upon the threat to get away from it. So that might be running away, that might be backing away, that might be hiding, that might be delaying or procrastinating on the thing that we experience as a threat. It might be withdrawing, it might be disassociating. Disassociation happens when, for example, physically getting out of the situation is not possible. And then there's the freeze response. The freeze response, when you think about that from a biological perspective, and you think about animals who also have freeze responses, is that from an evolutionary perspective, a predator in the wild is less likely to be able to detect that which might be their prey in the wild if that other animal is stable or frozen, right? Not moving, okay? But freeze is a natural response to our perceived threat. And it's what our brain, specifically the amygdala, does before it is making a decision about whether it is going to fight, flight, or flop, that we'll talk about shortly, okay? And then let's talk about flop. Flop is basically when the other options don't work, our amygdala will trigger the autonomic nervous system to go from mostly sympathetic to predominantly parasympathetic activation, okay? So the body will go to actually like a floppy state where muscle tension is lost and make it hard to move or move forward. Our system sort of shuts down. And how that happens for folks who are experiencing threatening situations is that they might not outwardly protest the thing that they are experiencing until they can get through so that they can keep themselves safest, okay? And so those are the main stress responses that I just want you to have a general awareness of. So I also want to share with you that when we experience stressful or traumatic experiences in our past, those cause several reactions. Our brain, in essence, sort of takes a snapshot of the situation that we experienced. And anytime it then is confronted with something that is reminiscent of that experience, it then leads us to have a similar stress response. And that stress response that is sort of encoded in your body is really becomes an automatic process for us. And that automatic process is integrated into our body and leads us to have similar stress behaviors again and again, okay? And so we sometimes call this a body flashback, and that reaction is not under our conscious control. what are some indicators that we are experiencing symptoms of trauma and stress? You see them on the screen. When we are fearful of something, and perhaps maybe our fear is out of proportion to the thing that is actually happening, that it resonates with something that we've experienced in the past. It also shows up as other forms of emotional distress. If we're feeling jumpy or hypervigilant, despite what might be happening in the present state, that might be, again, reminiscent, there might be something that triggered previous experiences. When we have difficulty sleeping, or we're feeling restless, or we're having attention problems, feeling disconnected or numb. Sometimes distress shows up in terms of our digestive system, where we have stomach upset, where we might have heart arrhythmia or palpitations or difficulty breathing. For anyone who's experienced a panic attack, you'll note that the beating of one's heart or the pace of breathing can unexpectedly quicken, and as we're having those symptoms of panic. And then stress and trauma can show up like aches and pains and illnesses, and psychosomatic illnesses are really our emotional life showing up in our symptoms, okay? One of the things that we know about stress and trauma comes from study on ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And what we know from this research is that the more adverse childhood experiences that an individual has, the higher likelihood that they might have problems in the future that might show up not only as mental health concerns, but also can show up as physical ailments as well. And so here are some examples of also some of the behaviors that we might see in folks who have a higher number of ACEs. I also want to say that simply because someone has had adverse childhood experiences does not mean that they will engage in risky behavior, or that there will not be or has not been post-traumatic recovery. Human beings are greatly resilient. And sometimes we can gain insight into what we're experiencing in the present by understanding that some of our current behavior is due to previous experiences in the past. And so being able to approach those things both from a past and present perspective can be very helpful in terms of treating things holistically. So, because we know that life comes with stressors, and we know that life also has ongoing trauma, and that this has been an objectively challenging time in the history of this country, if you're watching this in the US, and of course around the world, that being aware of these emotional first aid practices can be very, very helpful in allowing you to know how to support yourself and your community. When we think about emotional first aid, there's 3 steps to emotional first aid. And we'll practice strategies from each one of those. So the first step is safety. So in order for our bodies to return to a sense of calm, it needs to have, our bodies need to have signals that they are safe and away from threat. And that's what safety as the first step of emotional first aid does. The next step is stabilization. In stabilization, what our goal is to focus on the here and now, and to help folks to be able to calm their system, focus on their breathing, and to release adrenaline. And then self-regulation. Self-regulation is the place in which after traumatic of stressful events, we're helping ourselves and others, again, return to a state of calm, and to be able to balance themselves so that they can then use skills like the ones that we will practice, that they will go back to things that they have used and practiced previously to help them to feel well. Okay. All right. So think about this as we go forward, that often emotional first aid is applied after challenging or stressful circumstances like natural disasters, right? And so I'm going to give you that framework, thinking about it as something that's happened that's outside of our control, and folks are impacted. But I also want you to know that these 3 steps that we'll go through can be used in ongoingly challenging times. So in safety, really what we're doing is focusing on what often comes natural for folks, right? Like demonstrating connection by smiling at someone, asking them very simply, how can I help you? These are things that you do after they've been removed from the threat. Um, and of course, that any physical medical needs are met. And this is a time where really what we're doing is helping ourselves and other people's bodies to settle. And often that happens um, naturally, right? And that happens without any kind of intervention. But if the person isn't unable to settle, or if you're not able to settle, something that you can do is the butterfly hug that I'll show you in just a moment. So we'll practice the butterfly hug, but you can also do these things like get the person to safety, really ask how you can be of service and help them. And that can help them to begin to allow their body to feel like it is beginning rebalancing. But in safety, the first activity that I want to show you is the butterfly hug, okay? And so the butterfly hug, let's see if I can move my picture out of the way so that you can hear it. Well, you won't be able to, but it says hug underneath my picture. And so you'll see this person here. And simply, you don't need to be sitting in the position that the person in the photo is sitting. But simply what you're doing is placing your hands um, over your chest here. You can even take your hands out to your shoulders, so it really doesn't matter. And what you're doing is flapping your hands like the wings of a butterfly. And so you're doing this. And as you do, you're breathing slowly and noticing the change. And you can also do this bilaterally. So the butterfly hug was developed um, by an EMDR practitioner who worked with folks who were survivors of Hurricane Pauline in Acapulco, Mexico. The purpose of the butterfly hug is to create connection with the self. It's to open the heart, balance the hemispheres of the brain, any bilateral stimulation. So bilateral meaning anything that is one side, then the other side, and can help bring about a sense of comfort when one is experiencing intense emotions, okay? And so you continue that practice until you or the person feels calm, okay? So next, let's go to step 2, which is stabilization. In stabilization, the goal here is to help yourself or the person that you're helping be in the here and now, to move from what they've experienced to the experience of this moment, right? So not in the past and not in the future. So being in the present, we're doing things to ground us in the present, and we'll practice the 4-7-8 breath and the blowout. Okay. I'm also wanting to show you this grounding technique getting here now. And that's simply, and this is a very popular one. You might ask the person, what do you see in the room? And you can say, name 5 things that you see in the room. In the room that I'm in, I see my phone, I see some potted plants, I see my keys, and I see a vase, and I see my cup of water. You might ask next, what do you hear in the room? Tell me 2 sounds that you hear. I hear the buzzing of my light, and I also hear the whooshing of the wind outside the door. And then you might ask, can you feel your feet on the ground? Bring your attention to the ground and notice what your feet feel like touching the ground. An alternative to that is you might ask folks to notice their seat in the seat that they're sitting in, and notice what it feels like to connect to the seat. And then you can also ask the person to count by 3s out loud. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Okay. These are grounding techniques. They require you to be present in this moment, noticing your surroundings, being back in the here and now. Another technique that is really useful is the calming breath. So for the calming breath, you can think about it as the 4-7-8 breath. In this photo, you may not be able to see the top box here, but that is a 4. So you're going to take a deep breath. And what I'll say as you do this is that taking these breaths, just 2 to 3 calming breaths, can move us out of fight or flight state to a more calm response state. And so if you or the person that you're sharing this with is particularly stressed, they may need more than 2 or 3 breaths. They might need several breaths. But to practice this, what we'll do is take a deep breath and breathing in, counting to 4. You're going to hold your breath, counting to 7. And then breathe out, counting of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I often think of the first one as the practice round. So I'll take us through this one more time. You're going to take a deep breath in to the count of 4. 2, 3, 4. Hold that breath, counting to 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you're going to breathe out to the count of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll do it again. Taking a deep breath in, 2, 3, 4. Holding as you're able to 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and then breathing out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the calming breath. You might hit pause and take yourself through this a few more times. And as we continue these practices, what I always want to encourage is that take note of how you feel before you do them, and then take note of how you feel afterwards. That gives you an indication of what might feel most right for you and your particular body. And also, what I suggest is that you try these at least 3 times, each one of these. I find the first time is like just to practice, the second time is to experience, and the third time is to kind of see, like, do you like doing it and does it feel helpful? The next stabilization exercise is perhaps one of my favorites. It's called the stress blowout. And we're going to follow this. You won't be able to see me fully, so you'll see the person, the human that is in the image, and we're going to just do like they are doing. So hands up in the air. You're taking a deep breath and lifting your hands up. You're making fists, and then you're bringing the fist down, facing you, fast, blowing out air like a shh, and then releasing it, opening your hands to let it go. So bringing our hands up, make a fist, pull the fist down as we're, you might do that as you're able with your full body. You do that 3 to 5 times. Here's what the stress blowout is for. It's to release anger, upset, and irritation, as well as overwhelm. And it again, as these stabilization activities do, it helps you to be in the here and now. And so there's a person whose name is Donna Eden. Her techniques are called Eden Energy Medicine. And she suggests that when people do this, like the shh is really like telling your mind to bring that like you would shush a person if that's something that you do, to like allow the stress and anger that you feel like to come out. And what you're doing is using some of your excess adrenaline to push out carbon dioxide from your belly. Um, and that carbon dioxide might be in your belly because of shallow breathing, that is common during a stressful situation. And so that's part of the reason why we do the stress blowout. It's to really calm your body, but also get that carbon dioxide out because it accumulates if you are breathing in a shallow way. Remember, we talked earlier about one of the stress reactions is that you might have changes in your breathing, and shallow breathing is something that happens when we are in a state of stress. So the third stage of this process is self-regulation. So in self-regulation, we got to safety, then we went to stabilization. Now, through this third stage, we are more able to be conscious actors in our emotional first aid. And so we'll practice these techniques that you see on the screen to help us to respond to our body's needs. Self-regulation allows us to begin the processing of something that was traumatic right away. It kind of can help us to take down some of the charge of the situation. And it helps us to train our body to utilize these self-regulation tools when we experience difficult situations. Okay, so safety first. We're removing ourselves or the person that we're helping from the threat and helping them reconnect to their body. Stabilization is helping ourselves or someone that we're helping to be in the here and now, and to get back into our bodies. And we do that through our breath and the blowout technique. And then now self-regulation is helping our body to return to our state of calm and balance, to learn to be able to use the skills that we practice to help us to feel well. That also should say to you that the calming hug that we'll practice and these other techniques are things that I recommend that you practice ongoingly as part of your self-care and resilience practices. Okay, as we do this, I recommend you notice how your body feels before you do it and then afterward. So the calming hug, this can be helpful to an agitated nervous system, and also the balanced hookup that we did in the beginning, the butterfly hug, are also other tools that we can use. This is to help us to calm anxiety and agitation and shift our energy from fight and flight back to a more regulated state. And you can do this anywhere without attracting attention. So you're going to cross your arms as shown. So one arm is hugging your torso, and then the other arm just folds over and then goes over your elbow. Okay, so you consider stand while doing this. So one hand wrapped around your upper arm just above the elbow. Okay, and then the other hand is touching your ribs. We're going to do this for a minute. And then you're going to switch. So you're going to touch the opposite rib with your hand as you're able. And then use the other hand to wrap around your elbow as you are able. And do this again for a minute. You can continue doing this for as long as you would like. So after a minute, you can switch back to the other way, and that will work as well. Okay. All right. Let's continue. This next one is called the Thymus Thump. It comes from a person named John Diamond, who his work is called behavioral kinesiology. The purpose of this is to kickstart our system and to quicken the body's recovery and to move the body into parasympathetic mode, release shock and anxiety. And it can be used if someone is feeling panic coming on. So what you do, again, as you're able, is with a hand in a soft closed fist, what you are going to do is thump or tap on the center of your sternum. It's similar to where the picture is. Underneath the sternum is the thymus gland, and it's activated by this thumping. And you can continue doing this until the sensations in your body feel better and your system is more grounded. One of the ways that I learned this is to tap in a circle in this area. You can do it either way. So you can thump like this, or you can tap. Different schools of thought. I talked to you about Donna Eden earlier. She teaches doing this in a circular motion, whereas John Diamond teaches it this way. And again, you can continue until your body feels calm. When you stop, notice how you feel now, and you might compare to how you felt the first time we went through this. So now what we're going to do is use what's called the 4 thumps. And we're going to tap on these 4 places on our body as we're able, right under our eye on the bone, right here, underneath our collarbone. And then we'll also go right here in the center, and then here, right underneath our armpit, wherever you're able. If you're unable to touch any of these points, you can just also imagine yourself tapping there. All right, so let's practice the 4 thumps. We'll start here underneath our eyes. Underneath our collarbone. Center of our chest. And then here underneath our armpit. For those who wear a brassiere, it's sort of like the bottom of that on the sides. That's the 4 thumps. And the 4 thumps are used to help get our nervous system up and moving. And this is a technique that is taught by Donna Eden of Eden Energy Medicine. Next, we'll go to the trauma tapping technique. And so you'll see all of these points. There are 14 of them. And what you're doing is helping us to bring up something that is lightly upsetting, and to help us to bring a calming response in our body so that we pair a greater sense of calm with the thing that is lightly upsetting, rather than some of the stress or charge that we feel in our body. This is called the tension tapping technique. It's created by the Peaceful Heart Network, and you can check out their their tapping app, going to selfhelpfortrauma.org. This is, again, to help to diffuse and desensitize challenging memories, by helping us to take the charge that's encoded in our system after we've dealt with the challenging situation. So what you're going to do is tap through all 14 points, and then pause, take a couple of breaths, and tap through them again. And we'll practice that here, but I'll do it once, and then you'll do it the second time yourself. So when you start, we're going to start at the side of our hand. And so if you make a fist, you note that there's a little thing that comes out of the side by your pinky. That's the part that we're wanting to tap on. So we're starting here at point 1. Then we're going to our inner eyebrow, 2. Then we're going to the side of our eye. This is 0.3. Point 4 is underneath our eye on the bone. The 5th point is underneath our nose. The 6th point is underneath our bottom lip. The 7th point is underneath our collarbone. And you can also tap in a circle. The 8th point is similar to what we did underneath the arm. The 9th point is inside our little finger. 10th inside our ring finger, and I'm at the corner of the nail bed. The 11th point is inside the middle finger. The 12th point is at this finger. I think that's the pointer finger. The 13th point is outside the thumb. And then the 14th is back to where we were before in a circle. So what you're doing is thinking about something that was lightly upsetting, and then by bringing it to your attention, tapping through these points. And you have it here. You'll do this again a second time on your own. And you can continue doing this a few times until you feel more calm. Okay. So we've just gone through these techniques. You can rewind and go back to the ones that are enjoyable for you. What I want to suggest is that for those of us who do work that is helping work, whether that's in the office, across our screens, or doing movement work, it is helpful to embrace our own self-care and stress management so that we can bring as much of ourselves as we are able to the work that we're doing to change the world. And so taking an opportunity to utilize these practices on your own and the ones that you already have can be truly helpful and transformative for your well-being and your ability to do the work in the world that you desire to do. Want to make sure that as you are continuing to do this work, you are aware of how stress is impacting your body, that you have your own stress management routine, that you have people that you can talk to. If you are interested in continuing this work, we encourage you, and I encourage you to share about emotional first aid in your community. Think about who you might share this with, and not only think about who you might share this with, I invite you to think about what your action plan is for how you might bring this to other people concretely in your life, your family, your community. I'll drop my email along with this link, and you can feel free to reach out to me if you have questions, you or if you're watching this with other people. And also, what I invite you to do is take a screenshot of these resources so that you can go to them. the app that I mentioned earlier, and then some videos. So I invite you to take a screenshot of this as well. Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out with me during this time. And I wish you wellness and well-being as you continue along your journey. I'm Dr. Cicely Horsham-Brathwaite, and I'm so glad that you spent this time with me. Thank you.